Hi everyone, in this video I wanted to go over a few problems from worksheet 9, reference angles, and worksheet 10, quadrantals and inverses. So the first question is on worksheet 9, which is number 13, which asks you to find the exact value of cotangent of negative 13 pi over 3. Remember, if we just look at this pi over the denominator, that's going to give us our reference angle. So in this case, our reference angle is pi over 3. Now the next thing that we realize is since we're moving negative, we're not going to be moving this way. We're going to be moving clockwise around the circle. So we're going to start by going down. So first off, we might think negative 13 pi over 3 is a pretty big number. So what you can do, let's think about if we moved all the way around the circle once. So in this case, since we're moving this way, we'd get to negative 2 pi. If I write that in terms of pi over 3, that's going to be negative 6 pi over 3. So that's not enough. So let's try to add another 2 pi or negative 4 pi. In that case, we're going to be at negative 12 pi over 3. So again, if we move around the circle again, that's still not enough. So I need to add one more pi over 3, which will bring me over here. Now what you might want to do is go to your unit circle and see what this point is for the regular 0 to 2 pi. So this point right here is really like 5 pi over 3 normally, but you'd get there by going like this. And that point is 1/2 negative 3 over 2. Now, if we are thinking in terms of radians, we need to figure out, first off, tangent of pi over 3. So to do that, we're going to go to our chart and look up what tangent of pi over 3 is. Tangent of pi over 3 is square root of 3. So now we need to figure out, we're working with cotangent and we're in the fourth quadrant. So cotangent of pi over 3 is going to be flipped. So it's going to be 1 over square root of 3. And I have to rationalize by multiplying by the square root. So I get square root of 3 over 3. The last thing I need to figure out is if tangent is positive or negative in this quadrant. So in this quadrant, if we have all students take calculus, tangent is negative, so that means our final answer is negative the square root of 3 over 3. Our next problem is number 19, which is pretty similar. This one asks for the cotangent of negative 15 pi over 4. So in this case, again, we know we're moving this way because it's a negative angle. The first thing, since 15 seems kind of big, what I'm going to try is see what negative 2 pi is in terms of pi over 4. So if I need to get a common denominator of 4, I'm going to multiply both top and bottom by 4, so I'll get negative 8 pi over 4. So once around is not enough. If I try twice around, which is negative 4 pi, that's going to be negative 16 pi over 4. So negative 16 pi over 4 is too much by pi over 4, so we'll move it back pi over 4, in which case we get here. So this point is actually like our typical pi over 4 on the unit circle, which is the point square root of 2 over 2, square root of 2 over 2. Now, if we look at our chart, we don't have cotangent, but we have tangent of pi over 4, which is 1. Then cotangent, we have to flip, but luckily when we flip 1 over 1, we still just get 1. And in this quadrant, everything is positive, so our final answer is 1. Now moving on to worksheet 10. Our first problem asks us to solve for any theta between 0 and 2 pi, so all the way once around the circle, where sine of theta is equal to 1. If you remember, when you see something like a 1 or 0 when we're working with sine and cosine, that gives you a hint that we might be working with quadrantals. So remember, sine is our y value. So if we think about our unit circle, where do we have a y value of 1? That only happens once up here at the point 0, 1. That angle is 90 degrees, but since we're working with radians, that angle is pi over 2. So there's only one answer for number 21, and it is pi over 2. In 25, we have a really similar problem. If I see a 1 or a 0 or a negative 1, remember this is a quadrantal. So if I think about, I'm looking for a y value where it's negative 1, that happens down here at the point 0, negative 1. This would be 270 degrees, but since we're working in radians, our answer is 3 pi over 2. And there's only one for both of these angles. There's not going to be two. Just for quadrantals, usually for other angles there are two. And last step in number 27, the first thing we have to do, if you put a box around your function, you can solve for it. So we're going to add 1 to both sides. So we're looking for where cosine of theta is equal to 1/2. Now, if I think about when cosine of theta is 1/2, that happens for pi over 3. So our reference angle is pi over 3. Now, if I'm thinking about all students take calculus, if I'm moving once around the circle, that happens in quadrant 1 and quadrant 4. So our first angle in quadrant 1 is pi over 3. And if I look at my unit circle, in quadrant 4, the one with the reference angle of pi over 3 is 5 pi over 3. So there are my answers. Let me know if you have any other questions or any other ones that you want me to go over.